The next presenter will be Dr. Michael Ellims. He is a principal engineer working with Ricardo. Dr. Ellims was introduced to computing using punch cards at high school and has been working with them ever since in areas as diverse as full-text databases for storing fossil information to cryptography and system security. Dr. Ellims has worked in safety-critical systems since 1990, performing various roles on engine controllers, FADEC units, in-wheel electric motors, and brake systems. He now spends most of his time considering hazards and risks. Over to you, sir.
Ooh, all right, buttons. Can that show the legs up? Nice to know what it looks like. Very careful thing here. One point from the last speaker, they're talking about there is one exception to standards. IEC standards are automatically incorporated into the corpus of law in Germany. So if you publish an IEC standard, it automatically becomes required to follow it in Germany, but only in Germany, which is why we have ISO 26262, because otherwise the automotive industry has to follow 61508. Just an interesting thing. So I'm talking about validation, not verification. And there's a wonderful quote by a gentleman called Barry Baum. Validation tries to answer the question, are you building the right thing? Right? Doesn't matter how well you've built it, does it do the job you want it to do? And the natural question for autonomous vehicles is, what do you mean by the right thing? And I'm not thinking generally here, I'm thinking specifically, because actually we don't define what driving is, we teach it to human beings. Right? There are several problems associated with that. So at the very basic level, we're not totally certain what we're trying to validate. And the big problem here is driving is taught within the context. And the context is several 100,000 years of the evolution of Homo sapiens, and several million years of evolution for primates, which means that a lot of the functions that you think of as you doing are completely automated inside yourself, right? And actually, most people who get driver's licenses about 16 years experience dealing with the real world. You say, oh, there's a car. They understand what you mean by the time they're behind the wheel. They understand car, they understand truck, they understand bus. And it doesn't help that the real world is unbelievably complex. Who knows what this means? One person. Who knows what this means? There's two versions of the same sign in China. Both are current. Right? All new signs are this shape. Out in the countryside, you'll find the stop triangle. Right? Another problem here is ODD, which Tim mentioned this morning, is absolutely astronomical. I mean, operational trade, different types of road services, you know, concrete motorways, metal roads, tarmac, different curvatures, banking, curves of counter banking, and it goes on and on and on. There is actually a reasoning paper by Phil Copeman that actually lists and goes through this in detail. It's a very short paper, it's only 5 pages long. But basically it just lists what the domain is. And it's an eye-opener for the fact that actually someone can get a 5-page paper out of it. And actually, then it gets really hard, right? This is a photo that's used occasionally by the guy at Tesla in charge of their automated driving program. Can people work out what this is? It's modern art. It's the traffic light tree in London, right? Right? It's on the middle of a roundabout. Right? And actually, the point here is that a human will know they're on a roundabout, and that's something in the middle, so it's probably another one of those works of art. Okay? This one's interesting. Right? There is no sign in this picture, it is just the back of a bus. Right? This crash is painted on. It's a vinyl wrap on the back of the bus. Right? One of my former colleagues here, Eric, basically says he's got a photo somewhere of a vinyl wrap with school children running out back. Right? So there is a lot of visual ambiguity out there. The visual ambiguity in this case is deliberate, because you look twice and say, oh yeah, should have gone to spectators. It just makes you remember the name. It's meant to be funny, it's advertising. The children running across the road on the back of the bus is to make you slow down because your initial thought is, God, children. So how big is this problem, right? This is a big problem. A lot of people have been working on this for a long time. BMW say they've been working on this for 30 years. No, and from published data, I get estimates for Google. They have 8 million miles of real road testing. That was back in 2018. They're doing 8 million miles a day in simulation. That's a total amount of simulation of 16 billion miles. Right? They are in limited operation in one suburb of Phoenix, Arizona. Right? And they have, apparently at the airport, there is a whole bunch of Chrysler Pacificas, all covered in wrap that haven't been deployed because they're not quite ready. Tesla, estimates are that they have 1 billion miles of testing at the start of this year. By the end of this year, they'll have 2.3 billion miles. They say they'll be ready for automated driving by 2020. December 31st at 23:59. Possibly. It's a big problem. GM Cruise, basically they joined the program. They bought a 7% share of this program for $2.5 billion. So if you're going to be making self-driving cars, it's a lot of effort, it's a lot of money. Quite frankly, getting to the moon isn't easier. This is a problem in Newtonian dynamics and materials engineering. Once you've got the materials, you can make it happen. There are lots of partial solutions that people put out here. Limiting the operational design domain is a favourite one. Waymo do this, that you geofence your car so that it only operates within one geographical area. Right? And if that's what you need to do, it's a perfectly good solution. But at the same time, Waymo do not operate their vehicles in rain, snow, or fog. I can ride my bike when it's sunny. I want the car when it's raining. And the problem with this is that, this is a little bit difficult to extend. If you have a specific problem in a specific area, fine. Doing it outside of urban areas becomes more and more problematic, and you have bigger problems keeping your databases up to date. The cars can probably do it for you, but you have to work out how to do it. Another solution is requiring the driver to take over at level 2. It works sometimes. There are some very famous examples where it didn't work and people died. So it's not going to work at level 3 or level 4, because basically monitoring the car just becomes too monotonous. And people aren't good at monotony. They want to play Candy Crush on their phone or something else, anything apart from what they're supposed to be doing. External human monitoring has been suggested as a solution. Quite frankly, I suspect this is going to be even more boring than sitting in the car and trying to look at what's happening in 5 different cars real time. You're going to be looking across the screen and not seeing anything. You might be able to deal with 1 car at a time. If that's the case, that sort of solution isn't scalable, maybe for test driving or whatever thing. But for 1 billion cars, you are not going to be able to find 1 billion people to monitor all those cars. It's not worth the effort. Some of the approaches that we've looked at define what I term as partial safety goals, i.e. partial safety specifications. One that came from via Volvo is to stay in lane is unambiguously safe to manoeuvre laterally, i.e. you brake straight ahead unless you're absolutely certain you aren't going to hit the animal or the pram. Other things, there's a project from Mobileye called responsibility sensitive safety. And they have some simple rules. Don't hit someone from behind, don't cut them recklessly, right of way is given, not taken. They all sound perfectly sensible. to a human being. There are problems with some of the ways these rules are, ways of thought, like don't have someone from behind leave so much gap between the car that you're in and the car that's in front of you. That gap is always going to be filled up with 2 or 3 other vehicles. So basically you're going to be continually falling back. So there are some practical issues implementing these. But let's just think about the first thing. Stay in lane. This is unambiguously safe to manoeuvre. I mean, a lane is something easy to understand, isn't it? It's so hard. It's just 2 white lines. Apart from the fact that those 2 white lines aren't a lane, they go straight into a crash barrier, as the gentleman on the Tesla. He would have survived if, prior to that accident, somebody else who wasn't in the Tesla had actually taken out all the crash barrier apart from the sign. Because basically he was killed because he went straight into the sign he'd mounted on concrete, right? And all that, all the structure that you can see in this photograph was actually absent. That a human driver did that, right? So it's not just a problem for cars. Some of these problems are hard for people, right? So if you find something on the road that's going to be hard for you as a driver to understand, think about how hard it's going to be for a machine learning algorithm, right? This is a more recent example, and it's actually kind of funny because the Tesla has just launched itself up the dividing barrier, but it's still happening. And this has additional clues. This has chevrons, whereas this doesn't. So this is just working out what a lane is really, really difficult. And this is just the start, right? It gets worse from here on in. Lanes are fairly obvious. They're painted on the road deliberately. It becomes more and more ambiguous when you're talking about single-lane country roads. And what you need to do is protect the edge that isn't painted. And there are thousands of variants of this. There are single-lane country roads that, they're not quite single-lane, and they have a middle line. How do you interpret that? As a human being, you know from experience. Beginner drivers get these things wrong. Fundamentally, when we design automotive systems up to now, we have used this sort of process here, and it keeps coming back. I'll apologise for that. The series of processes. Basically, you do have a main process, and you have some sort of process that can check that it's actually doing the right thing. That's standard practice. When you come down to sensing and detecting the environment, checking your perception is correct becomes quite difficult. Either you see the man at the roadworks holding up the sign and you see that it says stop or go, and you don't. Right? There's a difference between stop and go. If you go when it says stop, you're very liable to cause an accident. So for some of the problems in perception, there is no alternative but to rely on visual imagery, because, as was said before, we're not going to put special road signs out there for you because we can't even afford to fill the potholes. Right, so whatever autonomous systems are going to have to deal with the information that comes back to us as human beings, which is the signage that exists, the lines on the road exist, indicators, warning lights, brake lamps. They're all going to have to interpret these images. Right, so we could take another road rule. We could think about this. Vehicles should always come to a road to halt at a stop sign, which is where we started this conversation. Right? Unless it was given that specific example of a stop sign as a triangle, it's not going to know there's a stop sign there. And AI, people who do machine learning have actually looked at problems like this. This is a very famous example with a stop sign, and the paper is online here. And what they've done is they've hacked the image by putting a post-it note on the stop sign. Right? The AI thinks this is a speed limit sign. There's another not quite so famous example of someone who drove past the same highway identifier sign in his Tesla every day. was posting, yeah, day 6, still thinks the speed limit is 105. Because the Tesla is interpreting the highway 105 as a speed limit sign. You know, you would think signs would be easy, but they're not. You know, different light coming from different angles, different shadows, snow. You know, a stop sign covered with snow. Is it a legal stop sign? Probably. You know, you should be able to tell it's a stop sign from its shape. As a human, you can do that, but you need to be able to teach machines like this. Can we engineer solutions? Like one proposal that was put forward was to use ensemble neural nets. So basically, you use machine learning. You use different types of machine learning with different structures, with different data sets to make, you know, inversion programming and inversion hardware development. Right? One paper that I found, with not too much effort, showed that the accuracy of using the ensemble over using the best neural network, it jumped from 94% accurate to 96% accurate. If you need 99.999% accurate, this may not get everything you want. It may help, but it may not take you there. Uncertainty, right? When you're driving a car, you know there's a primary school and there's cars parked by the road, you go slower, you take more care. And it's one of the rules that was suggested by the Mobileye group, is, you know, basically in ranges of uncertainty, you can take more care. This might give you some benefits, you know, and there are two types of uncertainty we use here. We use intrinsic uncertainty and classification. You know, I'm sure that this is a pedestrian pushing a unicycle with a probability of 80%, or it could be a pedestrian pushing a wheelbarrow with 90% probability. No, so when you run a neural network, you can get estimates of how sure it thinks it is. And there's extrinsic uncertainty over time. By extrinsic uncertainty, I mean it says, you know, what the Uber vehicle did when it killed the pedestrian. It started off thinking it was an unknown object in the road. Then it classified it as a vehicle, and finally as a bicycle. Now the problem here was that it didn't decide to break a lane, it tried to drive around it. And the algorithm for driving around each of these objects is different. You can think about invariance. You know, a person has certain classical properties. You know, there are certain width, there are certain height, there are certain ratios, and this is true unless they're on stilts or they have a box on their head. And there are all sorts of other things that can be carrying a box, and it looks like a big fat person. You know, it might not be a person. It may not conform to your invariance. Other invariants you can use is basically, you know, if you thought it was a person and then you didn't know what it was, it's still something. You know, or if the person disappears from one train to the next, there's probably still a person there because people don't come in. You know, you're not sure what you're saying. So there is useful information in this idea of invariance, but it needs to be thought out very carefully. Other things they've done is Phil Copeman has investigated adversarial testing, i.e. changing images to see how your system responds to them. You add noise, you add a bit of a Gaussian filter there to blur it a little bit. You know, with reasonable set of these changes, you should still be able to detect that there are people or vehicles in there. You know, perceiving a stop sign is a big problem. This is a legally valid stop sign. The only thing wrong with this stop sign is the bolt at the top rusted out. Right, so it's fallen down. It's pivoted around the bolt. You know, somebody suggested, you know, you're not going to see stop signs that are upside down. Actually, it's a thing in America to turn stop signs upside down. Some people think it's funny, but this is just a real example of where the bolt rusted out. Systems have to deal with this. And at this point, I got, okay, I've told you it's really, really difficult, and you have to think really hard about this. So what do I say now? Well, I can say it's really, really hard, but actually one of the final thought as I was doing this exercise that sprang into my mind is this, from Boris or it's vital. A successful test is a test that fails. Right? If you are testing self-driving vehicles, you should be seeing lots of failures, at least to start with. I'm not sure whether you could use a decreasing rate of failures as a metric for improvement, but if you are not seeing failures, I know one thing for certain, you are not trying hard enough. Thank you.
Any questions?
You can hold me down with baseball bat.
Oh. Thank you, Ben Bradshaw. Thank you for your thought-provoking presentation. Do you think it's actually going to be possible to validate or verify autonomously at level 4?
Okay, let's start with human validate. Do you mean proof? Okay. Answer this question is, what do you mean by validate? If you mean prove or show unambiguously that they will never cause accidents, the answer is no. The state space is too big. If you mean something less rigorous, like that in no more, they will not cause an accident any more than every 1 billion miles, that might be possible eventually. Right? And I think actually the solution is that you can't validate these completely. The world is a big place. You know, people think of new ways to be stupid all the time. So the answer is, simple answer is no, not fully, but you should be able to do pretty well.
Very short question. How hard would it be to, on aggregate, outperform human drivers?
Given my drive down here on the M11 this morning, not very difficult. No, actually, human drivers are nowhere near as good as they think they are. Right? A lot of what counts for not having an accident is when groups of drivers all take a small part of avoiding action together. The gentleman who undertook me this morning in his truck on the M11 would have hit the very nose of my car if I hadn't taken my foot off the accelerator. He had almost done enough to avoid the accident, but not quite, so I cooperated with him by actually letting my vehicle fall back because I could see he wasn't going to make it, and the car cost a lot of money. So humans have lots of small accidents. What we see there, I have a problem with what we see in the accident statistics tend to be accidents where police attend. There are many more accidents where the police don't attend, and it's dealt with by insurance companies, and I'm not sure what the difference between the two piles are. But I suspect human drivers aren't particularly brilliant. When I drove motorcycles, I hospitalised myself a couple of times by just coming off. I had backed into a few objects, and I have actually driven into the back of a gentleman who decided that he wasn't actually going to go around the roundabout after all. So I consider myself reasonably safe. I know what the rules of the game are. It shouldn't be very difficult for an AI to do as well or better than us. It's going to take a lot of work. But they should be better. They don't get distracted. They don't turn around to try and stop the kids in the backseat fighting. I don't have to do that so much anymore, but no, I'm not worried about it. It was a big problem. Let's get to that.
Going to give you a difficult one, right? Okay, we get to level 5. Technology is what we're proving you're 99.9999%, right? Okay. As a pedestrian, what's actually going to stop me from a risk perspective and then just stepping out in front of the road, blocking all the traffic in London?
Down the end. Come on, yeah, look. It goes there. I know, technology I hate it as well. Nothing. Right. Apart from a man in a high-vis yellow vest with the word police on the side of it. If your aim is to step up, Tesla, interestingly enough, Tesla have just introduced something called Sentry Mode on their Model 3s, right? Which means that all the cameras are looking all the time, and if you do something like try and steal one of the wheels, you'll be filmed doing it, and the police will come and knock on your door. Right? If you step out in front of an AV and cause it to do an emergency stop, I'm sure the AV will record you having done it, and the police can put your mugshot on the most wanted site.
A million pedestrians in London, some 100,000 cyclists, sort of all going out in front of
Cal failed at it. They failed at it.
It'll be societal norm not to do such. We've got the societal norm that you wear your seatbelt. We've got the societal norm that you don't drink and drive. People still do it, but they are in the minority. And as we head, and we're talking 20, 30, 40, 50 outwards, there will be a societal norm that you're reliant on mobility as a service and AVs to get around. Yes, the teenagers will find it fun to see if they can stop an AV.
The problem is not going to be the world of all AVs or no AVs, because we're in the world of almost no AVs. The problem is going to be when 5% of the world road traffic is automated vehicles, because they still have to cope with humans, and humans are really unpredictable, right? But they do have to cope with humans. I'm sort of hoping that the advent of AVs might do things like reduce the amount of congestion in some of our megacities. Right, so you'll have a lot of cars running around, you won't need parking spaces, they can be turned into playgrounds or whatever. And you just use transport as a service. Right, so as you said, at that point, people see more benefit from not hacking the cars than they do from getting it. It becomes just something you don't do. Because, teenagers don't have to rely on mum and dad to go from A to B. They're going to enjoy it a lot more. Okay, I'll stop it.